I did not yet share, so I have to share it, of course. So, okay na. So, share. Ayan. So, can you see it?
Yes, yes, Doc. Application session.
Okay. So, for our session 2, so this is actually presented to you last time. So, we are going, of course, to our session 2. So just to recall the outline of today's session. So we are going to talk about searching for Scopus journals or reputable journals, publication charges and ethical guidelines and issues. And for the workshop, so you will be asked later to create a possible list of Scopus journals or ISI journals with the publication charges. Of course, you have to consider that because you also need to see if it fits your budget and the website so that you can go back to that journal. Also, for the publication dates and how frequent is the publishing. So if you are targeting later that this must be published within the same year, of course, because your target is before you what they call this, before, let's say for instance, you're going to enroll your dissertation writing later or your thesis writing, you're done with the prerequisite requirement, which is to publish your paper. So this is a sample template for you to use. So list of Scopus journals for mathematics, for instance. So you have to place the journal name, the website, publication charge, and how frequent is the publishing. And of course, are you ready? So I'll assume that it is yes because of that wonderful presentations that you shared. And I hope that the tools that we use are really helpful for you. Okay, let's check yes. Okay, so in searching for Scopus journals or reputable journals, you cannot get away with what they call as predatory journals. So the concerns here before we can come up of searching for Scopus journals or reputable journals in general is to answer first questions like, what is a predatory journal? So what is a reputable journals? What is an open access journals? So in the presentation of Sir Dave, thank you, Sir Dave, for granting our request for you to talk or to give some message here in this webinar. So he mentioned already about us brief discussion about predatory journals and reputable journals. And of course, even for the term open access journals. Okay, let's move to the first question. So what is a predatory journal? So personally, I encountered the word predatory journal when I was searching the internet and trying to find for a possible journal where I can publish my paper. And there I encounter Bill's list of predatory journals. So who's this Bill? So Jeffrey Bill is a librarian in Denver, Colorado, and he was the one who presented, or in my readings in some articles, he's the one who presented this word or coined this word called predatory journal. Okay, so let us first, just to understand what is the predatory journal, let us hear a short statement or a short interview that I downloaded from the internet or YouTube so that we can, of course, see what is really the meaning of this predatory journal. But I think I have to again change my screen. because of course you cannot see what I can view here if it's not in screen. And again, for a while, I have to change my voice, or rather the speaker into sync system. I'll go back. Teka nga, saan na siya? Ay, yan. Nakakarinig dyan? Wala pang sound dito sa part na to. Yan, si Jeffrey Bill. Wala.
But we all know that with open access.
Wala? Naka 100 naman yung sound niya. Wala. Pero ako, nadidinig ako? Hello? Yes, okay, so for the information of everyone, if you cannot hear the sound, can you just go over with the subtitle?
A gold open access and publication fees today versus
Meron na?
the older processes of fee, page charges and subscription fees in traditional journals.
Well, page charges, which actually still exist, are usually paid to what we call society publishers. And these are publishers from a society of scholars, for example, the American Chemistry Society, the American Physical Society. They're nonprofit organizations. But the problem is with the new model, the gold open access model, we have commercial publishers whose goal is to make as much money as possible. And they're not really page charges. These are what are called article processing charges. And they're a lot higher than page charges generally. And they're pure profit for the for-profit company.
One of the challenges in Asia is that many authors, whether it be in China or in many of the other countries through Asia Pacific, are not really aware of the quality of brand of a journal. They're aware of the big journals, Nature, Science, on the medical side, Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, or Lancet. But when you get into the society journals, microbiology journals, names can change, and I understand that this is really a strategy of predatory publishers. Maybe you can explain a little bit of that.
Sure. The predatory publishers use lots of tricks to make people think that they are legitimate publishers. And one of the tricks that they use is they have journal titles that sound as if they're a legitimate international journal. They often use the term international in the title. They often have titles that are very similar, maybe only one or two words different than legitimate journal titles. The names of the publishers themselves often will have the name of a Western country like Canada or the United States or Britain or British in them, even though they're published in South Asia, for example. So they'll do anything they can to trick researchers into thinking that they're legitimate publishers when, in fact, many times they're not.
And this is the predatory nature of the publisher, is that they're trying to literally trick the author into submitting a paper to them when they have no real interest in the science. They only have a commercial interest in the money that they're gaining from publishing.
That's exactly right. They use deception and lack of transparency to trick authors into thinking that they're legitimate publishers when they're not.
Some of the things that you showed in the presentation at the Council of Science Editors meeting that we just went past was with respect to the fact that some of these journals go as far as to fabricate an impact factor, take text right out off of pages of legitimate journals, and while they're doing something that is inappropriate, they're actually not even doing it in a smart way. They're very lazy about how they create these journal fronts. And maybe you can talk about some of the things that an author really should look for to validate that the journal they're looking to submit to is in fact a reputable journal.
Well, that's exactly right. The predatory publishers will lie about anything because their goal is to get the money from the author. And what they're selling is a quick and easy publishing of your research. And the high quality journals take longer to publish articles typically because they go through copy editing and they go through a proper peer review. So the predatory publishers are selling speed and an easy publication. And we know that true scholarly publication isn't fast and it's not easy all the time. So beware of any publisher that tells you they can publish your paper in a month or less from the time you submit it. Also, take some time and look at their website, look at the other papers that have been published, look at the quality of those papers. Ask yourself, would you want your article to be next to one of these other papers in a table of contents? And look at the authors and look at the editorial board members. And I also advise people to look at the location of the publisher. Many times these publishers will hide their locations. You have no idea where they're based, or they even lie about where they're based. They might say they're based in New York, when in fact they're just using a mailbox service, mail forwarding service there in New York.
So one of the other strategies that I understand that they've used to try to entice authors to submit the papers to them are mailing campaigns and invitations to be authors, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the tactics, unscrupulous tactics that they take in order to attract an author, and what an author needs to be beware of.
Sure. As researchers grow and become known in their field, their names and email addresses will appear on websites, and these publishers will go and harvest that information from the websites, and they'll send you spam emails soliciting manuscript submissions from you. And they've even gotten very good at that. They will send personalized spam email as if it's one friend writing to another friend, and they'll say, for example, we read your article, and then they'll give the name of your the title of your article, and they'll say, we found that to be very interesting. Would you like to submit another one to us? So they're trying to appeal to the ego of the individual It's a very effective strategy, and I think all researchers need to be aware of that strategy. In addition, I'll say that the publishers often don't tell the truth. They'll say that their journals have an impact factor when they really don't have an impact factor. They will lie about that, and they'll lie about other measures of impact, and they'll do anything they can they'll say anything they can to make you submit your article to them and pay them the article processing charge.
For any young investigator, it's obviously flattering to receive a letter inviting you to be a reviewer of the journal, inviting you to maybe even be on the editorial board, or the fact that your research has supposedly been followed and they're looking for you to submit a paper to them. These are practices, quite honestly, that in some cases legitimate publishers have used in the past. How does one, especially a young investigator, differentiate the difference? What's real and what's not real? Do you have any tips?
I advise people to read widely in your field, get to know the top journals, see which journals have the most citations. Also, talk to senior colleagues in your field, to ask them what the good journals are. Look at the journals that they publish in. Look at the legitimate impact factors of journals.
Hello. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so with that statement of Jeffrey Bill, we are actually being reminded that there are some journals. So for me, again, personally, the definition of predatory is that when publishers act as the predator and that they are just they are just up to the money that you're going to pay as your publication or as publication charge, I mean, and that it will not really undergo a process of peer reviewing. And as mentioned in the video, if the journal now will if the journal now will send you, or rather the publisher will send you emails and then invite you to publish in their journal, so that's the time that you have to also think if the journal is really reputable or if it is just a predatory journalist. But after the presentations of bills of this list of predatory journals, there's a point that he stopped doing this, mainly because of some concerns, like let us see the University World News about this. So he stopped. Can you see the news? Can you see my presentation? Why Bill's blacklist of predatory journals died?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
some of the concerns presented in this article is that his fellow university librarians whom Bill's fault for over promoting open access publishing models, because as if that Bill's is against open access journals. And then of course some of the publishers, like a well-financed Swiss publisher, got angry and because he placed the journal in the list when in fact, of course, the Swiss publisher is claiming that it is not really a predatory. So, and also some of other concerns are it can be because of the complaints of publishers, librarians, and others. So there are a lot of issues that Bill has stopped this or Bill stopped adding list in this predatory list. But the article ended also with this issue, so it also caught my attention. So if you want to read about this, you can actually go over or go back to this when you receive the copy of our PowerPoint presentation. So where is that part? Here. So who is the real predator? Because of course, as mentioned, here is Bill presenting the list of predatory journals. And then it needs to be stopped because of some concerns like the complaints, and also some even wants to sue him in court because of that. And now the question is, who is the real predator? So is it some of the issues is like this. So is it the one, let us consider the highlighted here. So let's see that if the researcher now choose a low quality journal and did not receive the reward for publishing, then isn't it that there is a what they call this let's go back to that. If the researcher choose to publish his paper in a low quality journal, so the reward of publishing it is there. So he thinks that he is fulfilled. So do you think there is a predatory that occurred there? So it's like it is the option of the researcher that even if it is low quality, he wants it to be published because of the purpose of publishing it and nothing more than that. And then the next one is that who is really a victim when, for instance, let's still go back to the researcher who chose to publish in a low quality journal. So he published his paper, but the reward is denied or not given to him because of that. So it's like a question asking us that, isn't it that the one who did not give the journal is the predatory or the predator, I mean. And then, of course, for the issues like if it's in the list of predatory journals, do we have enough evidence to say that it is really a predatory journal? Because the idea is like this, because we placed or Builds placed the list there, then the tendency is that a lot of researchers will not publish anymore to that journal because Bill declared it as predatory. So who is really predatory? Is it not Bill who tries to stop the researchers to publish in the ones he identified as predatory journals? But of course, I do not have anything against Bill or anything against the open access. So what we are trying to do here is just, of course, let us just consider this as an eye-opener for us. So thank you for Bill. Because of this, it serves as an eye-opener for us that, as mentioned, there are existing predatory journals. So let's go back. And to learn more about him, actually there is even a movement wherein they created a page telling that Jeffrey Bill is probably a predatory blogger. So of course we're not going to discuss this anymore, but the question is that they are also questioning him because he does not have enough evidence, and we do not have a standard on how to determine whether the journal is predatory. So it is just based on how he understood. And as a matter of fact, the term is coined, so it's his own, what we call this, it's his own operational definition of what is predatory. But as I have mentioned, I do not have anything against Bill. Okay. So you can read the articles if you want when you receive this. And then this is the sample emails that I receive asking you to publish in their papers. But as mentioned in the as mentioned in the interview with Bill, these are the potential predatory. Because if you can maybe consider it, but you have to check also if the paper is in Scopus journals, ISI journals, so all journals that are classified or refereed journals. So they will claim that they read your paper and that you are being invited to publish, and it will be just a short period of time. So again, just to cite, emphasizing that the journals, or you're buying for the speed. So your payment is for the publisher to publish your paper in a short period of time, and even in a less than 1 month. Okay, so let's also now give the definition of a predatory journal, and this is based on the 35 authors here. So we have 35 authors. So leading scholars and publishers from 10 countries have agreed a definition of predatory publishing that can protect scholarship. So it took 12 hours of discussion, 18 questions, and 3 rounds to reach. So as I have mentioned, the interview with Bill is based on, of course, on his operational definition of what is predatory. Now, based on the definition of this leading scholar, so there are actually 35 authors here who came up with this definition that predatory journals and publishers are entities that prioritize self-interest at the expense of scholarship and are characterized by false or misleading information. So deviation from best editorial and publication practices, a lack of transparency, and or the use of aggressive and indiscriminate solicitation practices. So this is the definition. Now, going over with the same article, so they have came up also with this. So no list to rule them all. So we have here the bills list highlighted issue. So it's 1,135. Cables, aside from bills, there is also another list of predatory, and that is the list of cables. So it's also called cables predatory. So it's 228, 10,406. So all of this are written here, but there are also journals which is in the DOAJ open access journal, because before we are just limited, or maybe I am just limited to the idea that if you want to know if the journal is legit, you just need to go to the website of the DOAJ. So this will give you the directory. DOAJ stands for Directory of Open Access Journal. So it will give you, but surprisingly, some of the journals here are identified by bills and identified by cables as predatory. So there are also, of course, some are which are being verified that are legit. So now the question is, how can we determine what is really predatory from non-predatory if they can actually place their journals also in what do you call this, in some pages like the OAJ, which is being used by a lot of scientists, researchers. Okay. Then, of course, with that, so we end up with like a hanging statement that until now, we do not yet know how will we know whether the journal is a predatory or not. Because when I presented to you that this are the list, or rather that we can use bills list, we can use cables list, we again became doubtful, because after that, we are also presented with some articles trying to stop Bill from doing what he is doing, from coming up with the list. Because maybe, as mentioned, he selects some of the journals, and some of these publishers of the journals claim also that they are not predatory. And there is a list there that the scientists really reacted, because of course he was trying to convince everyone that if he wrote the journal there, then it's like he's also questioning the works of a lot of scientists, a well-known scientist, a well-known researcher. So they really reacted. So they have to put an end with that. So that is what really happened now. So Bill is even called as the predatory itself. So he is a predatory. They call him as a predatory blogger because of putting all of this. And let's go back again. So what is not a predatory? So of course, what is not a predatory is a journal that is reputable. But how will we know whether these journals are reputable? So when we say it is a reputable journal, so it can be because it is considered a refereed journal. So these are the journals that they have this peer review process before you can be accepted or rejected maybe after that review. So if your basis of reputable journal now is because it is a refereed journal, it is because of the indexing bodies like the Scopus, the ISI, the Institute for Science Information, the Clarivate. But who told us that these are the reputable journals? That's another question. Now, if your basis, or if you're going, of course, because we are in an institution under the Commission on Higher Education, so we can actually, let's say, use this as a standard because it is based on CHED memorandum orders. So this, the CHED has actually a list of recognized journals. So this is the latest one, 2017, because even them, they also need to stop coming up with recognized journals. So this is until 2017 to 2019. Then after that, there are no more other journals being published by CHED, or rather a memorandum that states the updated list of their recognized journals. So they also have to put an end. The reason why, I do not know. So for this, if we will stick to the CHED, so we might consider this list as reputable journals. And if we are also going to consider the National Research Council of the Philippines, an organization of the OST. So since based from this, what do you call this? Advertisement for call for application, because they are just considering ISI and Scopus index, then it means this is their standard. They only consider those journals indexed in ISI and Scopus as reputable one. So this is now the information that also gives us an idea that CHED temporarily suspends incentive program for journals. So this has something to do maybe with my statement that the CHED also puts an end in accrediting some of the journals. So they temporarily, because they are giving incentive program for journal, they temporarily place this on hold. So which means also maybe that this maybe the reason why they also put an end in publishing or in presenting the accredited journal. So the reason, but it's not directly telling that this has something to do with that. So it is because the implementation of incentive program for journal so needs revision and assessment of its guidelines. So it is being placed on hold starting December 1. And what are the reputable journals for them? If we will just consider this article, so it is the Thomson Reuters Web of Science. This is the Clarivate. So the what they call this, the former name is Thomson's Reuters Web of Science, but it's known now as Clarivate. And then Elsevier's Scopus Journal Incubator, or generally Scopus or Web of Science journals. So these are the one being considered by CHED. And as the, of course, working in institution under Commission on Higher Education, if you want that your work be recognized, then we also need to consider this as reputable journals. But I also captured here the statement of one of the editor-in-chief in IACOR Journal of Education. Their journals, some of their journals are indexed in Scopus, and this is her answer in the question. So only Scopus index journals are reputable. So we have here, because Scopus is currently the leading and indexing database preferred by a good number of universities, there is a belief, so it's a belief, that only Scopus index journals are reputable. So this is not the case. There are many journals that are not registered with the Scopus for a range of reasons, but they are reputable journals following good academic publishing practices. Also, other multidisciplinary databases such as Web of Science or ProQuest Central are similarly rigorous in their selection criteria. So though aside from Scopus, as I have mentioned, Web of Science was also considered in the CHED. Okay, why are, if you happen to see some of the Scopus journals and encounter grammatical errors, why are there some published works in the Scopus that are grammatically wrong? Let's just term it that way. So because if we will just go over with author's responsibilities, which are placed in some of the Scopus journals. So one here might explain, and this is how it is stated: all manuscripts should be written in good English. This is the responsibility of the authors, not the editors. So papers below the standard for the journal will be returned to the authors for rewriting and can be rejected for this reason alone. So which means, of course, maybe it's of course just a statement that maybe the researcher failed to let his or her paper check to a language editor. But in terms of the content of the paper, because it passed through the reviews and all of that, all of the process, it is being published in the journal in a Scopus. So sometimes we also have this idea that because it's grammatically wrong, and so this it affects the whole journal. So when you find just one article in that journal that is not with errors in grammars, so sometimes it affects our idea, or our rather perception, that the journal is no longer reputable. So we also need to consider that. So now, the idea here is that, so you are being presented with the list of predatory journals. If you will just access the bills list, you are also presented with what are the possible reputable journals. But as I have mentioned, there are also some issues about that reputable journals. So who can now determine what is really a reputable journal. So recently, I attended a webinar on choosing the right journal. So in the concluding statement of the speakers there, they were able to come up with advice that for us to determine whether it is a reputable or not reputable, because we know that what happened to Bills when he presented that, so he have to be stopped. So if we're also going to do that, they may, some of the publishers may also sue us for doing that. So what we can really do is to come up with a committee, maybe in the school or just maybe in your department, to assess yourself the journals and then share it to your colleagues. And it is in the what do you call this, it will be the um, responsibility of the authors and his whole department to assess whether the journal is reputable or not. Maybe you can consider that it is indexed in the Scopus, but as I have mentioned, it can also be that not all journals in Scopus are considered as I don't like to use that, not reputable, but it may be not meet your standard. So it can sometimes, of course, as mentioned, it can be affected by some of the reasons, like you just saw some grammatical errors like that. Okay, so for that, so who determines what is reputable? It is the researcher. So also, if we will go back to the statements or to the article, it is now you as a researcher who wants your work to be published. So you have to also think if you want to be published it in a low quality journal or into high quality journal, because one hindrance would be that it would be difficult for you. For instance, just an example, it would be difficult for you to publish it in a high standard, and for a low standard or a quite low quality, it is possible that you can publish it at very fast. So that will be some of the considerations also that you have to choose, or decision that you have to make. And these are samples, like for example, I encountered this because one of my students asked me to check if this is a legit. So the term is legit, or for us, if it is a reputable journal. So when I went over, nakikita pa din po, ano? So when I went over the article, so it is possible that this is legit, or rather irreputable, because of course I am looking into the indexing partners. And one of this is the International Scientific Indexing, so ISI. But when, of course, you have to check. When I check the website of the ISI just to see if it's really, let's see, ISI journals. So when I check it, so this is the journal. And then let's go back to the name of that. Oops, where is it? Here. So let me just copy, or maybe in our PowerPoint presentation, let me just copy the name. So where are we now? Here. So I'll copy this and let us check it in ISI. So this is one way to check. If you're, of course, your standard is that it is indexed in the ISI. search our journals. Okay, so title or ISSN or EISSN. So let me place the title. Okay, there you go. The journal's title is shown here, but there is a but. The impact factor not index. So which means it is not indexed really in the ISI, because if it is indexed in the ISI, then the impact factor must be present. So it is not index. So when the student asks the journal, of course, because his paper was what do you call this? His paper was accepted for publication, and that he needs to pay a minimal amount. So it's not that too high. It's a minimal amount. And he asked me about this. We discovered that it is not indexed. And when he messaged now the journal or the publisher did not reply to, of course, what do you call this, to appeal maybe to his claim that it is not indexed, or he verified if it's really indexed, so he did not receive any reply. So that's one example. So it means that it is possible that this is not a reputable journal. So it is also possible that this is a potential predatory journal. Okay, let's move. Another one. So is this. It is claimed here that all accepted papers will be published in conference proceeding with ISBN, and one of I did not place because as I have mentioned, I cannot just claim that one is not a reputable journal. So maybe for me it's not reputable, but for some with a lower maybe standard, they can consider it as reputable. And then one thing more is that when we go over, because if we are trying to assess now our indexed, also we also have H index in our Google Scholar. So once you have your papers published and then you have created your Google Scholar and you have to place all the published journals there, if it is really something like maybe it has something to do with its reputation really. So some of the authors, other researchers will cite your paper, and this will increase your index. So you have your H index there. And this is also being considered in organization like NRCP, yung National Research organization in the Philippines. So they consider this as also your scores, your score. So it happened that when I go over with the conference page, so they claim that the paper will be published in, so item number 3, in ERA, Scopus, and ISI indexed with additional fees. But when I went over now with the journal that they are claiming that it is in ISI, so obviously, so take a look at the bottom indexing and abstracting. So you cannot find Scopus and ISI index. So which means they are not telling the truth. So it's not really published in a journals that is published in index in Scopus and ISI, but it is only in my journal, JGate Index, Google Scholar. So the what do you call this? The indexing bodies presented at the bottom. So ISI and Scopus are not found. So you also have to be careful. It can be that it is something like enticing because you have your presentation at the same time your paper will be published in journals, but you have to check if the journal now is something like potential predatory, then it means that it can also be that the conference is a potential predatory. So they just want your money for the registration. They want, there's another additional fee here. They want your money for you to publish your paper when in fact it is not really indexed in Scopus and ISI. So why are they doing this? Why do they need to place that it is indexed in Scopus and ISI? So the main reason that I can see is that because of course, just like CHED, just like DOST, they consider Scopus and ISI as high quality indexing bodies that the journals under Scopus and ISI are considered a quality paper. So I think that's one. And then maybe they are aware that these are the recognized journals for your promotion, because of course the reason some of the authors main reason for publishing maybe is because it can give them edge in terms of their position in their work. So it can be that it will add something on their credential. It can increase the ratings in their rankings and all of other personal concerns of the reason why they want to publish their papers. But in fact, it's not really. So you have really to review first the journal before publishing. And let's move. Now, in the statement of, again, Jeffrey Bill, he actually is trying to connect that open access journals are the potential predatory journals. What is this open access journal? So I keep on mentioning it. So for me, as much as possible, I wanted that my papers will be published in an open access journals for a wider audience. For a, of course, if it's not open access, then it means that you have to pay for you to access that journal. So I have here business models for publishing. A comparison between subscription and open access, which I lifted from the presentation of one of the speaker in the webinar that I attended. As mentioned, the one entitled Choosing the Right Journal. So for subscription, so the subscriber pays for the content. So the audience, the possible researcher who wants to cite your paper needs to pay for him or for her to access your paper. So there's no cost for authors. It is a traditional model for scientific dissemination. For you as an author, you can freely access your paper, but for others, they cannot access it. They have to pay a certain amount for them to subscribe and access the content of your paper. And then for open access, so the journal or the publisher rather do not ask for payment. Excuse me. Okay, so here, so the author can, of course, access it, and other researcher can also access your paper. So most of my papers, or rather majority or almost all, can be accessed. It is an open access. But there is this one journal where I submitted my paper. So at first, it is an open access. So it is with DOI, or But then I noticed just recently that the paper, if you open the paper, it cannot be accessed anymore. It can be accessed. They place it in Amazon, they place it somewhere with payment for the whole journal if you want to purchase it. So I can access my paper, but if for instance you are searching for it and it will lead you into Amazon, and then they will ask you to pay before you can get a copy. I don't remember it that this is actually written when they asked us to submit our paper. So in the review process, there's actually no problem because this is under or organized, or the publisher rather is a university somewhere in the US. So I actually did not think that this will happen, pero there is an instance that one of my paper, and my problem now is that as I have mentioned, you can place all your published papers in the Google Scholar, and then under your name, so every time they will access it because it's under your name, then it can increase now your index. But because of that, even if other researchers will now cite your paper, it cannot be counted anymore because it doesn't have DOI anymore for that particular article. It is you can access it, but you can access the whole paper, so it will not be counted. So that's also one of the thing that you have to see just in case you're going to publish. For me, again, personally, before I am just I already encountered the predatory, but with just a limited knowledge about it, that I just know that if you have to pay, it is potentially, it is possible that it is a predatory. That's my limited perception. So what I am looking when I am searching for a journal is that there is no publication fee. So most of the papers, except for maybe the first one, because of course you are very excited that your paper will be published, so you pay for it. But of course, it will be there's a certain point in time that you also have to think that is it what they call worth it that you have to pay, when in fact there are existing journals that do not accept fee. So parang ganun yun. So you have to also balance. So if you have your money, then you can publish it with pay. But if you just also want that your papers will be published, all you need to do is just a little bit of effort to search for journals who do not accept publication charges. So they publish it for free. But some of the journals who do not publish it, who publish it also for free, is not indexed in, not of course, there are a lot rather of journals who, even that they do not have they don't accept payment, they are not indexed in the Scopus or in ISI. Maybe for some reason, I do not know, maybe they just or sometimes that is just their strategy for them to get possible researcher to publish to their paper. So from a period of time, it is free, but after that, when they are already a lot of researchers who knows that paper, they already placed a charge for that. I think if I remember it correctly, one of these journals that I encounter is the journals in Hindawi journals. So this is also considered a reputable, but there's a time that some of their journals, in some of their journals, they do not accept publication charges. But if you go back now, and I go back to that, I found that there is already a publication charge. So there, that is just parang it's a market strategy or just to get attentions of the researchers. Okay. So as mentioned, there are some that it is not indexed in the Scopus ISI, but can also increase your H index as long as there is DOI, because this DOI is unique for each of the paper. So when your paper is being cited and they use that, it can be counted in your Google Scholar. So how to search for a reputable journal? So if you want to limit that Scopus is the Scopus and ISI and the Clarivate or indexing bodies with reputable journals, then you go instantly to their website, and this is where you're going to find or to search for some journals. Okay, let us just load this. So this is the website of the Scopus. You can create your account, but even if without your account, you can still search. So if you know the author, you can search by author, or you can also search by source. So I'll click sources, and you can, if you're going to consider all of the sources or all of the journals here, we actually have 42,180. So of course, that is regardless of what is the subject area. So this is the whole journals, the number of journals in the Scopus. So if you want to limit it into open access, because you do not want, of course, to pay for subscription for you to see journals in some of that indexing, some of the journals. So you can check here, display only open access. And they have here conference proceeding, trade publication, book series. So you can just limit also in the journals. So let us place, for example, education, apply. So from 4,000 plus, so it is limited into 1,531. Pero let us just check open access again in journals and click apply. So you have to, so it's just 280 results. So these are the journals under education. So if you will try to check this, so you have to click the name of the journals and it will direct you to this. Now, one thing more is that you have to check the Scopus coverage years. So this is index from 1989 to present. So it can also be that it will end with, like, let's say 1989 to 2000. So some of the journals are limited to that. So you see, you may be again be overwhelmed that, oh, it's in the Scopus. So if it is beyond the date, let's say it is published in 2021, and then you are claiming it that it is in Scopus. So you are wrong if the coverage year is from 1989, example, to 2000. So maybe let's just check if we can encounter those. So usually, of course, these are the ones that place at the last, because this is not arranged alphabetically. You can also download this. Let's say Video Journal of Education and Pedagogy, or like this. So this journal is indexed in the Scopus from 2016 to 2019. So if you publish your paper in 2020, then the journal is not indexed in the Scopus. There is a gap. So it's again indexed in 2021. I was not able to review how the journal can be indexed in the Scopus. Maybe they also have this process of application. So maybe by that time, 2020, maybe Video Journal of Education and Pedagogy did not apply, that they will be placed in the Scopus. Or it can also be because of the quality, maybe. I do not know, because as mentioned, I did not review it. So I do not have a concrete or exact reason why there is no 2020. But one thing that I am sure is that if you publish your paper here in 2020, you cannot claim that it is a Scopus journal because it's not indexed in Scopus in year 2020. So you also need to see that. So source homepage. Sometimes you cannot find source homepage. So what you can do is to really copy this and paste it and search it in the internet. So let us see. So this is an open access. Sometimes it is also quite difficult to locate the fee. That is what, of course, that is what you really want to see, because the budget might not be enough for your, the amount rather of publication might not fit your budget. But here, let's try if we can find. So it's quite difficult to search it. Anyway, let's go back to my, again, PowerPoint presentation, because I actually identified here this one. So some of the example, because it will again take a lot of time for us if we're going to do that. But the idea is that you can find, maybe if you created your account, that's the time you can access it. It can also be like that. So here, International Journal of Educational Technology in Higher Education. So it is, the publication costs are covered by the journal. So authors do not need to pay an article processing charge. So it is free. So it's actually topic 2. And for Journal of Computing in Higher Education, take a look at that. What is the article processing charge? It is worth $2,780. And how much is this in peso? Magkano to? 2,780. Tingnan na lang natin dito. Excuse me. 2,780 USD to PHP. So it's 137,140.18. So sana lahat mayaman to afford this, diba? So if you can find some of the papers in that articles, so they afford this. They afford this amount. So some, as mentioned, some are free, some are a little bit lower with this amount. And if we will consider also the advertisement given or provided by the NRCP, their target, let's just go back to that. This one. So they just give a grant of 20,000. So if it is 20,000 and if you want to publish in that, so you still need to shoulder a lot of money, because 20,000 is not even half of that amount. So you really need to search so that, of course, you can come up with a list of potential journals where you want to publish your paper. But as I have mentioned, don't exaggerate na all of the journals ask for that huge amount of payment. So of course there are also some Just like what I have mentioned, majority of the papers that I publish are all for free. There is this one journal that it has the, what do you call this, our article publication charge amounting to like 5,000, I think, but they waive the amount, mainly because when they saw that we are from a university, they have this policy that if it's from the university, because it is also being the publisher is also university, so they have this option that if the paper is from a university, they can waive that amount. So we publish it for free without, of course, spending that 5,000, even if it's minimal compared with what we saw here, that it can really reach 130,000 plus. And just to guide you on how or what to do, the scientists, the researchers have this solution that if you want to check, you can go to the website, think, check, and submit to assess your paper, whether, or rather to assess the journal if it is reputable or not. So think, are you submitting your research to a trusted journal or publisher? So the word here is trusted. So what I use is reputable. Some use refereed. So of course, sometimes it means the same thing. So check, use our checklist to assess the journal, submit only if you can answer yes to the question on our checklist. And what is this checklist? So you have to consider the following. You need to be confident your chosen journal will have a suitable profile among your peers to enhance your reputation and your chance of gaining citations. Publishing in the right journal for your research will raise your professional profile and help your progress in your career. Your paper should be indexed or archived and be easily discoverable. And you should expect a professional publishing experience where your work is reviewed and edited. Only then should you submit your article. So you have to assess this. So you can maybe, as mentioned, you can ask the assistance of your colleagues, your collaborators, to assess also if you are choosing the right journal. So let us just go back to home and see. Ito ba yun? The same din lang yung nasa list. Ito. So I went back to check. So for check, so these are the items. Do you or your colleagues know the journal? So have you read any articles in the journal before? Is it easy to discover the latest paper in the journal? Can you easily identify the contact and contact the publisher? Is the publisher's name clearly displayed on the journal? Can you contact the publisher by telephone, email, and post? Is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? Are article indexed in services that you use? Is it clear what fees will be charged? Do you recognize the editorial board? So actually, this is also one thing that I usually do. I check the editorial board. So once I open the site of the journal, I also check the editorial board. And then I also check the publication charges and also the frequency of publishing, because I think the most frequent is quarterly. Parang it's majority is twice a year. So it's very rare that you can find journals who can publish once every month. So if it can publish every month, it seems like it's like also questioning its quality. So why can they do that so fast? is the publisher a member of a recognized industry initiative? So do they belong to the Committee on Publication Ethics? Again, so is it listed in DOAJ? But as you can see in our presentation, in one of the article that I have presented, some of the journals in DOAJ are also considered as predatory by cables and by bill. Open access, scholarly publisher association, journals online, applicants online, and all others. So the last one is the publisher a member of another trade organization, association, I mean. And let's go back again. Excuse me. So that's the second one. Okay, for the third one, aside from publication charges, you can also find in the same journals ethical guidelines and issues. So you can, some of this common are to declare to your chosen journal that your manuscript is not publishable elsewhere, to declare that there is no conflict of interest, to check all co-authors meet criteria for authorship and ensure appropriate acknowledgement made in the manuscript. So you have, of course, to what do you call this, acknowledge also the funding agencies that help you. It include appropriate funding statement in the manuscript. That's why for the DOST scholars here that can publish paper later, they have to acknowledge DOST, SEI. And then show informed consent and provide assurance that participants' rights are protected. Register clinical trials. These are 5 and 6 or N7 are statements if it's of course appropriate, because if it's not medical, then you don't need like clinical trials. And then explain how research using animal is conducted responsibly. So again, this is for science. Be alert to bias and follow guidelines for accurate and complete reporting of research. Inform the journal if you subsequently find errors in your research, and sign a copyright agreement. So you can find ethical guidelines in the different journals. So they have what they call this, some unique features, and some are of course common to all. And I also want to highlight that this are the ethical issues. Of course, plagiarism. So this is being discussed already last time. We also have here authorship. We are going to talk more of that in a little while. Conflict of interest. So in submitting for a journal, they also ask you to declare that there is no conflict of interest. Simultaneous submissions and duplicate publications. So this is also being raised by Ma'am Florence in the question and answer portion last time. Data fabrication and falsification. So these are the instances that you have your data, it's not favorable, but the what they call this, the researchers or the authors would like to modify the result just to see, or just to bring out the expected result that they wanted. Parang it's like, for instance, if it's level of knowledge, they wanted to prove that the level of knowledge is not that high, that's why they have to come up with intervention, when in fact there's no need to do that, because you are already doing a data fabrication. So, and predatory journals. Okay, so for just a selected issues, because of course we do have just a little time. For authorship issues, we have what we call a coercion authorship. So this is using coerced in, so that you will be placed as author. So there is also what we call as honorary guest gift authorship. So these are the authors that because it is your friend, maybe it is your colleague, you want them also to be placed there, or you have this ano ba, utang na loob na the author placed your name in the paper that he or she published. So in return, you're also going to place her name in your paper. So that's how this honorary or guest or gift authorship works. And ghost authorship, this is asking somebody to do your paper and then claiming that it is your work. So we call that as ghost authorship. It is one of the authorship issues. So for some, of course, I do not like to name anyone, pero for some with maybe enough money to pay, so they do this. And then for denial, if you are, of course, maybe you might what we call this, misunderstood this, that when you let your paper be analyzed, when you let your paper be grammarly checked, so that's a different story, because the content itself, the content of the papers are actually your output, and you just ask for the assistant. So you pay for the service of the statistician for them to generate the result of the tables, and then maybe the statistician help you in the first level interpretation, that is again is statistical part, but for the second level and then implication. So I think that's of course the role of the main author. So you must understand, as an author, you must understand your paper. So even if the analysis was done by a statistician, and then again, even if there are some corrections made by the editor, by your language editor, it doesn't mean that it makes him or her already an author. So you paid for that service. And denial authorship. So I do not know if for some, there are times that they are, it's like a personal issue maybe, that you are both working on that project, and then when he or she published the paper, you are not included as one of the author. For some reason, of course, we of course do not know that, but it happens. Denial authorship. You did not include or you did not place the real author. I don't know if that author or your co-author is aware that he's just being paid for doing that, because it can be that the contribution is significant and he or she must be part of the author, but when the paper was published and there he found that her name is not included in the paper. So that's denial authorship. Again, it's unethical, or it's of course ethical issues. So the authorship should be based on the significant contribution. So there's also an issue on the arrangement on how you're going to place the name. So who will be the first one? So the main author, the lead author, the person with greatest contribution must be placed in the first. Diba? And then, papababa yon kasi nga, sabi ko nga, it is based on significant contribution. What if you are the senior? Diba? You are the senior author. It might be that you want your name to be placed there. Pero parang may labas na coercion authorship yun, ano, natakot ka na lang na, ala, dapat si ganito kasi siya yung head ko. Ay, dapat kasi siya yung director namin, so dapat siya yung nandoon sa main author. Hindi ganun yon. So actually, if you are the senior and you know very well that your contribution is not that significant as with the main author or the lead author, senior authors are usually placed at the last. Diba parang doon sa movie din, parang yung mga main and ando doon sa last yung mga leading actors and actress kung minsan, parang ganun. So parang special participation din in a way. So yun, if you think that the person, di ba kasi sometimes it's a group work, and then from time nagawa na yung paper, ang daming excuses ng other collaborators. And then maybe for the full paper, they can be placed, but later that if it will be published already, you also need, of course, ethical issues there. Why will be their name be placed there when in fact, they do not have contribution? So nag-create ka ng mga ethical doon. And then when that author will be interviewed, her name is in that paper, wala naman siyang masabi. So mabubuking din lang kayo. So, ikaw nakita ko yung pangalan mo nandito na i-publish, pero pag tinanong ka pala, hindi mo alam kasi ang totoo, ikaw ay nilagay lang doon. Pero hindi ka totally part nung paper na yon. So you also need to consider all of those. Multiple publications. This is the second one. So I just chose some of ethical issues. I will not discuss everything anymore. So for some multiple publications, we have the redundant. So little new material. So this is maybe you will claim that what if my passion really, for instance, for medical, their passion is to work on issues like AIDS, puro AIDS yung publication niya, AIDS lahat. Okay lang naman yun as long as hindi siya redundant. So if it can create new knowledge, then it will be published. So let's say the author consider conducting the study in a particular group lang, and then for other paper, ang target niya kasi lumawak siya. So partial lang ng sa ibang hospital, and later makaka-come up siya syempre ng another paper for that. It does not mean na same topic, wala nang new material. Pero it also happens that the paper can also be redundant. So hindi dapat yun. And then duplicate, halos magkakahawig, redundant, duplicate, or overlapping. So yun din. So it can be that dapat meron kang additional more literature so that it will not be a duplicate. Or text recycling, baka naman doon din sa mga studies mo nang galing yun, medyo sinimplify mo lang siya, ni-recycle mo para magmukhang ibang study. So ethical issue din yun. And then, yun nga, yung partial part, it can be called a salami publications, pero yun generally ang mangyayari. Pero if you will make an effort to come up with, parang dapat you have to recognize your initial paper, lalo na kung talagang magkatuloy sila. But for instance, for my paper, ang first part ng problem ko for my master's is to determine yung mga metacognitive strategies knowledge, that which is also actually the heuristics. So in my problem number 1, I just focused dun sa heuristics. So I have a paper on heuristics. And then the second one, my problem is to come up with a model. So model yung problem number 2. So I don't think na kahit pa partial siya nung yung problem 1 and problem 2, it is a salami publication because mainly yung mga kuha ko naman na cited na materials for problem 1 is different from problem number 2 because for problem number 2, the focus is parang yung framework na. So you have to also see to it na ganun yung mangyayari. So dapat hindi exactly the same and then you just place, parang ang mangyayari noon, babalik tayo sa little new material, redundant, pero hindi naman. So it's a different topic and another topic for the second paper. But to go away from salami publication, you really need to also do an effort. So you cannot just copy your original rationale. So you can you have to think of a way how to really split it, and the rationale will just focus now on your problem 1 and another rationale will be focused on your problem number 2. So that's for salami publication. So well, we have reached the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you po, Dr. Malay, for sharing to us your knowledge and expertise on the topic.
May I bring back the mic to Ma'am Ivy?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you po, Dr.
Ma'am
Malay.
Ivy, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am. Narinig po ba ako? Hello, ma'am? Hello
Ayun.
po?
Yes, we can hear you, Ma'am Ivy.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you po.